Hello and welcome to Azur Lane Meta. Today we are getting back in the full swing of things with one of the top video segments on my channel, Meta Analysis. Welcome back, guys. We are going to be doing a meta-analysis video for the month of April. On our four main servers, not much has changed since March, so we are going to try and speed through this as quickly as possible. If you guys want to know about how the data is collected or what some of the potential errors could be, go check out my March video. That has the most updated data collection method. So let's take a look at the raw usage numbers for this month. Nagato and Amagi definitely still the most used ships, even though Nagato has had that air of only having a self buff for the last season. We still see her being used. Warspite in third solidified that she is more utilized than Hiru, despite Hiru being more popular for the Amagi fleet. We have Enterprise, Monarch, the Akaga still floating around. FDG is definitely on a slow rise up, going from 12 to 14 to 19. So we are seeing her become used as people level her higher and get more prints for her. Not too much interesting. I think Gasconade is probably the most surprising usage in this couple seasons here. But yeah, nothing too much. Georgia seeing some usage. Yeah, Georgia Gasconade. So some of the PR2 ships seeing a lot of usage. Centaur, Taiho, and Sugura definitely also usable for, Namagi choices. So taking a look at the Vanguard fleets for PvP meta, Juno and Yukikaze remain as the two most popular ships, although we have a change for the third ship. Noshiro is finally the third most used ship. She has surpassed Belfast as well as Jinsu for really being able to be used. The main four servers can use Noshiro. They all got her in the event, and now she's finally leveled. A lot of people have oathed her, and she is very good, giving an anti-torpedo bulge for free to all of your Vanguard ships is really strong. Evasion rate's also pretty good, and a torpedo buff to Yukikaze, already one of the best ships to use for PvP, is very helpful as well. So that's really a change. Azuma creeping up in the ranks, Ibuki creeping up in the ranks. Those are as people finish her. Ditto seems a little bit more popular than I've noticed in the past, but nothing too significant. Really, the big note here is Noshiro is used. So let's go take a look at our main fleet pivot table. We got a lot of different things used. Slight uptake in minor fleet usage because of the Russian fleet becoming used, at least. At least some people are using the Russian fleet. I don't know if that's for just personal preference, but the Soviet ship's pretty good and whatnot. So, of course, Namagi is our most popular, and so we got to look at the breakdown for how Amagi works. We have about half of Namagi fleets using Namagi-Ru or using Hiru, and we have about a third of Namagi fleets being Namagi Spite or using Warspite. The most popular use for Queen Elizabeth is Monarch and Warspite, and a bunch of other combinations that use Warspite and whatnot. We also see that Formidable Centaur is used, and those are like the two HMS carriers that you're going to want to use. So let's go ahead on over to the escort pivot table. One of the things that we notice right away is that Belfast Juno Yukikaze composition is no longer the sole title holder of first place. We have Juno Yukikaze Noshiro tied for first place in usage. That would make sense because Noshiro in the raw data is now used more than Belfast. We also see Noshiro as being thrown into ships with Yukikaze Azuma, thrown into ships with Ainami, thrown into ships with Jinsu, and even Ibuki. So we see a lot of uptake in basically throwing Noshiro into any IJN composition. St. Louis also had a very strong showing when paired with the number 1, number 2, Juno and Yukikaze. And outside of the Imperial Japanese Navy, well, there isn't really much to speak of, I guess. we see a lot of PR ships and whatnot, but the Imperial Japanese torpedo meta is very much alive right now. Juno, St. Louis are probably two ships that are outside of that, and it will only be further strengthened as more people get Noshiru and Azuma gets to dev level 25, dev level 30 for people. So let's move on to the pie chart for the meta-analysis of fleet compositions for the month of April in Azur Lane. As we see here, over 50% is Amagi. That's to be expected now that we're including all 4 major servers. The server Amagi is not included in this pie chart. Akaga is still coming in at over 5%. And so is Queen Elizabeth fleets. The Swan and Bunny fleets are basically non-existent except for the few people that want to use them for their own personal reasons. 15% of the fleet is made up by HMS Backline, which basically includes any 2 HMS ships that do not include Queen Elizabeth. So if you combine that with the Queen Elizabeth, we're looking at over 20%, or 1 in 5 fleets run a HMS composition. USS carrier fleets have basically dropped off the face of the earth this month, as well as USS battleships. They are barely tracking in at over 2%. German ships have always been pretty low because they do very poorly in PvP, but under 2%. Minor fleets take a little bit of an uptick at 3.5%. Other fleets, we're starting to classify a lot of the fleets into something, so the other fleets are pretty low. I guess the most common usages of ships that use other fleets are going to be Muse fleets, and fleets that use like Taiho or Sugura, or IJN fleets that are just not using Amagi. And then of course Waryu at over 5% is tracking pretty well. This is a pretty good fleet for players that are new and didn't necessarily have access to Nagato. Obviously now Amagi is pretty much accessible to anyone in the game with the rerun event, although those people may not have leveled up their Amagi yet, given that the rerun event is just happening, and this is for the whole month of April. So moving on to probably my favorite part of this video, the time graph. Obviously, before the blue was when we were doing 1 server, after the blue is when we do all 4 servers combined. We don't see too many changes, most things staying constant. HMS Backline took a huge uptake in this last season. It's kind of a weird pattern that they keep doing this zigzag thing, even despite combining all 4 servers. That's why you see pretty much every other fleet composition decrease there. We see other fleets decrease, which is good. We see minor fleets have this slow uptake, and you can see, if you can see there, there's that small little blue dive from the USS Carrier faction. We'll see where those kind of go out in the future with this Amagi server playing out. I expect more people to play Amagi. I also expect more fleets that are IJN based, so you could potentially see more Akaga fleets, or just kind of jank IJN fleets that are going to be categorized in the other categories. So I see Amagi, I think other, and I think Akaga have a chance of increasing in the next month. And it all depends on the events that we get rerun. Obviously we have rerun events that are going to be coming in. I think the next event might be French, which would actually really help in the minor faction fleet, because Jean Bart would be in that, maybe Lei Malane, although she's not good for PvP, but definitely Jean Bart is. But we have to see what events we're going to get rerun, and that will kind of make a decision of how this next month is going to look. Alright, that's it for the main 4 servers, but I didn't forget the new server Amagi. I stream on Amagi, I have a guild on Amagi, and of course I'm interested in the meta on Amagi. However, it's such a baby server, putting it in any of the data with the old 4 servers would just completely make it meaningless. So we're going to do it completely on the side, and we're going to look through it. So let's look here. We only have 2 seasons done. The first season, as you expect, over 90% of fleets using Hood. It was given out for free basically to everybody, and it's one of the strongest battle cruisers in the game. Unicorn was also given out free for the Amagi people, so having it sit around 60% for that first season when people are just trying to get ships makes a lot of sense. Of the top 5 ships, we have the 3 starters in that Vanguard, Portland being also a really common ship to use. Also with her retrofit, she's actually pretty beefy for this new baby meta that we're working on. Minneapolis was from the raid up, so it makes sense that she's there. One season later, we do get to see a lot of people get new ships. We also have, towards the very end of the season, a rerun of the Crimson Echoes, which gives people access to a lot of the Japanese ships. But a lot of people probably don't have those leveled quick enough to be useful here, but we will probably see them in this next month. Hood definitely decreases her usage. Unicorn decreases her usage, but those are the two most common. Saratoga sees a big uptake. Kaga, I think, is funny that we see a lot more usage of her than Akagi. Some people have not finished their Fox mines, but are just leveling the ship that they have, but it's just kind of funny to see that we see that. Washington, a lot of usage. Hiru, Cancer. Amagi's starting to see some usage. North Carolina dropping off. Queen Elizabeth, a little bit. Centaur, definitely. She's now in the general build pool. And that's pretty much kind of interesting there. We got Tosa making some impact, and some other ships like Long Island that you would never really expect to see. That will only be here for probably a couple more seasons until people have better ships to use, but that's for that. Portland gets used for the most common Vanguard ship. She's something that you need to level for your beginner missions anyway. She has a retrofit that makes her super beefy, and if you are not really worrying about your opponent having really strong battleships at the moment because it's a new baby server, she's actually pretty tanky. And it is also a little bit carrier meta because we don't have Warspite retrofit yet, although Sandy retrofit will be coming. And yeah, Sandy is the best anti-aircraft carrier they have. No one's going to have Seattle. No one can have any of the other really strong AA ships, so we only have Sandy, which without the retrofit item is pretty poor, although we are getting a rerun for that. And yeah, so we don't have Warspite retrofit to take out the battleships or even Duke of York, because on the English server that is not available to everyone like on the Chinese server. So Portland's anti-air ability is also pretty strong, and she's just really tanky when she's not getting one-shotted by like fully upgraded battleships. I expect her to be around for a little while we sit in this kind of mid-tier, but eventually she will drop off. Z23, seeing a lot of fans for all those German fans who can finally use a German ship for a little bit at least. Laffy, dropped off a little bit, which was interesting, but Yukikaze jumping up really high as people have basically been pulling her. Everyone in my guild has been trying to get her basically because she is just so important. Juno, you can farm for her. I farm for her in my first 2 days of playing on this server. She's pretty necessary for PvP. That's how you kind of start knowing that people are taking it seriously, because you're not farming for Juno if you're using her for anything other than PvP. Minneapolis dropping off a little bit. Montpelier is around. Belfast is around. Those are really good ships that you can pull in the general build, and they're just generally good for all sorts of content. Helena is starting to see some interest, and we got San Diego. Some people have their Ainami done, so that means they have max limit breaked all their starter ships. Obviously, none of those occurring in the first season, but now that people have played for a month, we get that. So some really interesting numbers here. I think there's some bullions down there. It's pretty funny. St. Louis, yeah, somebody had like a full PR1 composition. That person is nuts. They grinded a ton. Obviously it's not good, but they're showing off in their defense fleet, and rightfully so. So I hope you guys enjoyed that little off take to the Amagi server, and yeah, for a while we're gonna have to keep this separate. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this meta-analysis video as always. Thank you again to the data collectors who helped make this possible. I hope you guys also enjoyed the Amagi server data. Let me know if you guys want me to keep collecting that. It just takes a little bit extra effort to put that together separately and keep it all, not together. So if you guys did like that, let me know down in the comments. Like the video as well, and subscribe if you want more PvP related content to Azur Lane, as well as just some more high-end. I'm also going to be streaming my Admiral of the Navy runs on Amagi server quite frequently, so that's every 2 weeks, so hopefully that should be a little bit of fun too.